welcome to another session of Community Connections. Today we're talking about having children as a parent with SMA and all of the things that kind of involves, the do's and don'ts and what was tricky and maybe things that were unexpected. So my name's Becca, I'm just facilitating for this. And yeah, do you want to introduce yourself, Gray?
Yep, my name's Julian. I've got two kids, a girl at 16 and a boy of 10.
Hi, I'm Molly. I have a son. He's 15 months old and I've never done any of this before, so this is my first time.
Do you think that people with SMA are likely to encounter barriers around the idea of becoming a parent? And what were the sort of barriers that you guys encountered, if any?
I think I didn't really get that too much, but I think some people do. I've certainly heard about some people kind of the idea being not thought of as such a great idea, really. You know, it's a genetic disease, and there are quite a few people out there that still have these kind of eugenicist ideas that we shouldn't be allowed to breed and keep it out of the gene pool, blah 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 blah. Yeah. But by and large, it wasn't seen as such a bad thing, and that might have been because I wasn't actually carrying the baby.
Yeah, maybe. Molly, was it different for you?
Very.
Yeah.
I think I came up against prejudice, barriers, whatever you want to call it, at pretty much every single stage. From when we were talking about wanting to start a family. So whenever I would bring it up with doctors, I've been laughed at in my face before.
Oh, wow.
You know, the idea of, you know, I'd bring it up and yeah, it's like actual physical laughter. You could see he couldn't keep it in. And he would just giggle and said that I had to speak to a gynecologist.
You reported them?
No, I was very upset. I was only 21, so I had a question regarding what birth would be like for me.
Yeah.
I wasn't even thinking. I was too young at that point to really want to do it there and then. But
I have these questions. Yeah. I'm 21.
I was curious, but it kind of put me off asking anything for. Well, just I didn't ask again, and when we decided to, you know, start to try and have our kid, I went to the doctors for like a once over MOT, make sure everything's in, you know, good shape before I became pregnant.
Check your tires, all that kind of.
I know, yeah. It was the strangest experience. The GP that I saw told me that I would have a difficult time conceiving, while at the same time she had to Google SMA because she'd never heard of it.
Oh,
so I got this advice that had zero basis at all.
Yeah.
Because you were in a wheelchair by the sounds of it.
Well, yeah, just completely. She had no idea what was going on. She just thought, oh, disabled person, you're going to struggle.
Yeah.
And then she told me all about IVF. And it's really funny because I was actually pregnant when I went. It took us maybe, I think we worked out 2 attempts to conceive Oscar. Very fertile, apparently. So the woman was an idiot. And I did complain about
her. Yeah.
So,
and then, yeah, I could fill 3 hours telling you separate stories about every barrier that I came across.
So you, during your pregnancy, did you have kind of the like average midwife appointments, or did you have more with specialists? Or
I was consultant led, but it was mainly for their peace of mind more than how the pregnancy was going. My pregnancy was textbook. It was perfect and just the regular amount of misery that most pregnant women go through, as opposed to anything, you know, special. The only trouble I had was that they were very, very adamant that I had to see an OT, and I didn't need any kind of adaptive equipment, but they didn't take my word for it. So,
As in for the baby, or
no, for me, for managing, because I was very big when I was
you're
pregnant,
bigger, yeah.
and don't get me wrong, like it wasn't the easiest because I'm only little, but again, most pregnant women struggle with that.
Yeah.
And I was coping fine, and I wasn't unhappy with it or anything, but they turned it into a safety issue and tried to make it more than it was. So
Yeah.
I agreed to have a home visit with the OT, who told me that I had to have a stair lift fitted in my house. I didn't have one. I've never needed one. And I was like, well, I don't, I explained I don't need it. And they said that they would have trouble releasing my baby into my care once I left the hospital if I didn't get one.
So do
So
you normally walk up the stairs?
I normally crawl up.
You crawl, okay.
It's never a problem. I expect
You
I'll
weren't
need one.
gonna have the bump after you had the baby, were you?
And Jack had already arranged to have a month off.
Yeah.
And I'd already, I don't know if you know what I mean, but you can do something. You just know you have to figure out how
Yeah.
to do it then.
Yeah.
I knew I'd be fine. But I also got refused funding for the stair lift. So they wanted me to pay £4,000,
Right.
like that was compulsory for me to have my child.
Yeah.
And I still have the stair lift on my stairs.
So did you pay the money?
No, this sounds terrible, but the fortunate thing was, it's not that fortunate, but it worked out well. Jack's grandmother died a month before, but she had a stair lift that was brand new and it fit on our stairs.
Well, I'm sure she would have wanted it to go to good use.
Would have been very fine with it, yeah, and it really did work out quite well.
So
Sounds terrible.
Do you think that if that hadn't occurred, would they have? Well, I mean, they couldn't make you pay for it, could they? But do you think?
No, I think
regarding issue.
I think I would have. First baby, you're very nervous. Anyway, I'm an anxious person naturally.
Yeah.
And I wanted it to go as smoothly as possible. If it happened again now, I would argue and I would complain and I would insist that that was an outdated view and I didn't need it.
Yeah.
And I think if I'd have fought my corner a bit more, they would have.
Yeah, if you'd have pushed it, they would have backed off.
Yeah.
They might have visited you more, but they would have backed off.
Yeah. But the funny thing is,
But no, that's perfectly normal. I mean, the things that you don't know about when you have one kid is
that's it.
Everything really. You can read as many books as you like, but
well, that's it.
It doesn't.
It's all a learning curve, isn't it?
Yeah,
like
you just have to
thrown
do it.
into the deep end.
Yeah.
I suppose on the flip side, it's good that they had the option. Well, it wasn't really an option; it was pushed on you. But I suppose it was good that you were given an OT, so that if somebody did need extra adaptations, then that would be seen to.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad it's available for people that may need it.
Yeah,
it's
but
a shame.
It should be optional. It shouldn't be.
Yeah, well, yeah.
On you.
It's a shame it was so aggressive, but they also gave me a bath lift that I never used.
Yeah.
That was.
Yeah.
It's all. I think it was to make them feel better rather than me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And thinking about did you experience any kind of issues with your SMA? So did you get any more muscle weakness, or did it kind of affect any of that?
My bladder control was gone near enough.
That's common.
And it's not
people.
It's not like amazing anyway. But yeah, while I was pregnant, Oscar had this way of kicking me downward. And that would just make, it was just instant. So that was fun. And I'm pretty sure that was made worse by my SMA. But in terms of muscle weakness, it was like I had to work harder to move. So my chest wasn't amazing. Definitely, as he got bigger, that got harder.
Yeah.
But again, symptoms of pregnancy anyway, I think they were just exaggerated a little bit. But I was aware that would happen, and there's no lasting now I'm more or less back to how I was before I had him, just a lot more tired.
Yeah.
But that's fine. That's just it, innit?
Yeah. And thinking about actual childbirth, should we go back to you, Julian? I know you obviously didn't give birth to your children, but
No, this is something I'm quite grateful for, I have to be.
yeah. But were you able to kind of be in the delivery suite if you wanted to?
Yes, I was, although we kind of had to go in a week before because we thought my daughter was coming like that week, and then they managed to put it off because it was a bit early. And that, I think, was a bit of a wake-up call for the hospital. Okay. So I think they weren't that sure, but I'm kind of not one of those people that let other people tell me what to do very much. Yeah. So I get quite shirty quite quickly, and
you've got to though, haven't you?
Yeah, you do. And I got anyway. I did, and it was manageable. But then they gave my wife an injection, and it stopped. She wasn't my wife at the time, though. They gave my girlfriend at the time an injection, and it stopped, and then that put it off for about a week. And when I went back, it was quite a different experience, funnily enough. I mean, the whole giving birth and everything was it looked fairly horrific, but I was there. It was fine. There was loads of people in the room, and my wife's non-disabled, so it wasn't. It surprised me how many people were there. You know, people with needles, people with I don't know, everything. Really, it was bowls and cups and God knows what. And but anyway, I mean that went okay, and I think it almost took the kind of the almost having the baby thing for them to switch on and go, okay, soon this is going to happen, and we need to think about what's going to happen when they come back and actually have a baby.
Yeah.
And like I said, when I went back, it was very smooth.
That's good.
You kind of get a bit of a hormone-y thing anyway. I think even men do.
Yeah, I think so
but
too.
everything kind of gets blissed out a little bit because it's all
you remember
really
the good,
quite exhausting and quite emotional and all of that kind of stuff. So everything is slightly glowy anyway.
Yeah.
But in looking back on it 16 years ago or whatever, it still seemed to go much better because they were prepped. So I don't know, maybe you can visit somewhere or other. That might be.
Yeah, I think it probably is good because obviously, I mean they might not even think about it, which really.
No. I think they just literally were kind of like, oh bloody hell, and then they had to kind of rearrange themselves. And by the time I got back there, they'd either had a chat or it was a completely different set of staff or something. But it was fine, really fine.
That's good then. Yeah.
I'm pleased.
And Molly, how was childbirth for you? So kind of the adaptations you made, like Julian said, and the actual obviously physical childbirth for you.
I'm really conscious of the fact that every time anyone asks me a question about my pregnancy, it's always really depressing, but my birth was horrible. I had a C-section. It was planned. So I was 38 weeks and 3 days. And they wanted to try and keep me awake for the procedure, which I was up for, but I didn't think they'd manage it, and they didn't. So after about 45 minutes of trying to find a place in my ridiculously curved spine to put the needle, they couldn't find anywhere.
Did you have spinal surgery or not?
No, I didn't. Mine's inoperable, so
it's curved.
Yeah, but it's manageable. Yeah. So yeah, I woke up. I was put under, and I woke up. They had trouble getting me off the ventilator. I personally think because they just had no idea how to deal with me. It was all very strange. I woke up in intensive care 4 hours after he was born, with a tube in my throat. choking on it, you know, resisting the ventilation, and no one was there. So I woke up and I was choking for about 5 minutes. I still couldn't move because I was numb, with no idea what was going on. And eventually a nurse came and said, I need to ask a doctor before I can take that tube out. So I was like, oh, you know, cool. I couldn't speak, but great. And then she came back eventually with the doctor going, oh no, God, take it out. So that was my wake up call after having my son. And then someone told me eventually where Jack and Oscar were. Everything was fine. Oscar was fine. But that was about 8 o'clock. And he was born on 3:15. So,
Wow.
yeah. And then Jack came over. I was really drowsy. But he came to, I was in a different building, which I didn't realize.
Oh.
He came over, showed me pictures and videos of him. I was told they needed to keep me there overnight, to keep an eye, and that was fine. I was all right with it. I kind of thought something like that might happen. I got discharged from ICU at 8 o'clock the following morning, but because of their protocol or whatever, I didn't get taken to where Oscar was till 4 o'clock the following afternoon. And I didn't have my wheelchair. My wheelchair was with Jack. So I was literally just stuck there without my chair, with my baby in another building.
So where did you sit?
I was in the bed.
Oh, so
I
you
was
were
sat out
discharged, but
in-
you couldn't obviously go anywhere.
in a hospital bed. I felt fine. The staff at the ICU, they were lovely to me. And all the nurses understood the problem and they couldn't believe I was still there.
Yeah.
But
So
they needed.
did you know where your wheelchair was, or did you just not know?
I knew it was with Jack.
Oh,
But he couldn't leave the baby.
yeah.
And yeah, it's horrible. Like I don't like it being too far away from me, because that's life, isn't it? Really.
No,
So
no.
that
Part-
wasn't
it's
very.
part, well, it's part of me anyway. I get really.
That's it. Yeah, I was very
I
attached
get
to my
really
wheelchair.
unhappy if that's not.
If I ever have to get a new one, I get very very emotional. I get very attached to the chair.
My chair has names, so.
Yeah, you did that.
I don't name mine. I just make sure that every new one is identical to the one I've just got.
Yeah.
In every millimeter.
Apologize to the old one. Like, I love you. Thank you so much for everything you've done.
No, I keep the old ones for like years afterwards. As my
Bury it
second
in the
chair.
garden. Yeah.
Yeah. Never have less than 2 chairs minimum.
That's good advice.
Yeah,
Life advice from a pro.
So obviously the communication between the different doctors and things obviously wasn't very good. But so was Oscar born healthy? Was he like an average weight?
Perfectly, yes, perfectly. He was 5 pound 11,
Yeah.
which not a bad weight for me. I mean, I'm only
I mean,
like
me
that
and my
big.
brother were that we were 5
Yeah.
pounds something. So.
Perfectly fine average weight, and he was he was 38 weeks, so he could have gone another 2 weeks in there, and he'd have gone up to 7.
Yeah.
So, perfectly healthy.
So it was more to do with the logistics of organisation than it was.
And the red tape, basically. They had to have 2 people to take me down, and I couldn't go in one of their wheelchairs. It had to be, and it was just so happened to be a very busy day, and they didn't have the staff.
Do you think that so that when you had to be intubated, like when you woke up with the tube in your throat, did they say that was because they struggled to intubate you?
It was because I was under general. It's just because I was under general anaesthetic, so they had to. What they struggled with was getting me off it. So that was the reason I was there. Was because when they put me into recovery and tried to bring me round, they were struggling to get me to breathe on my own.
Okay.
It's an issue I've had before with previous operations. So once I'm there, I'm all right. But yeah.
Yeah, I think it's an issue with quite a lot of us, because when I had my spinal surgery, they were unprepared for how difficult it would be to intubate.
Yeah.
And I woke up in the exact same situation as you, actually. I woke up with a tube
horrible.
that I didn't think would be there.
It's
and
terrifying.
nobody was there, like didn't know that I was awake or anything.
It's horrible.
Yeah, so I definitely think there's kind of a need for doctors to understand more about
Yeah.
how we need to be anaesthetised and issues that can occur for that, especially obviously with pregnancy, because there can be added complications. Luckily there wasn't in your situation, but
Yeah.
I'm sure it heightens the risk.
Oh yeah, completely. Yeah, definitely.
Would you both say, I mean, you both kind of talked about the main thing was that the hospitals and things, the staff hadn't really communicated and thought about the logistics of what would happen. So would you say that kind of communication is key in having kind of
communication between departments seems to be a problem in every single hospital anyway.
Yeah.
Every available, like anything you go there for, if they'd have just spoken to them, your life would be easier.
Yeah.
But
Molly, did your doctors have a conversation with you beforehand about any previous problems you've had with surgery?
So much. Well, I spoke to them at length. I got all my old records for them from Oxford.
They were aware.
They knew everything. They just didn't pay any attention to me.
Which is a shame.
I know my medical history kind of. I could recite it.
Yeah,
you know,
we all could.
So, yeah, they just didn't listen. They just didn't listen. I had every single person I saw, from beginning to end, told me they'd never heard of my condition. So I was like, Wikipedia, mate. It's not difficult. So that's concerning.
Yeah, you can't odds people like that, and you can't. Well, all you can do is just fight it, I guess. And if I was you, go somewhere else if you have another one.
Yeah,
oh God,
both having those talks is key, but also making sure that they're actually listening. Would you say, for people that are watching this?
Yeah, I think you have to be prepared to advocate for yourself and really try and fire yourself up before you go in. And if you feel if you end up being defensive with people that don't deserve it, who cares? You'll have a better birth experience.
Yeah.
It's important. You only do it a handful of times, maybe, in your life. Maybe. If you're lucky.
Yeah,
I mean, and you don't have to be nasty about it, but you
you just need to be.
You just have to be extremely firm.
Yeah.
And if you have to take them right the way through their own regulations, then
I think people
want it to be as little about your disability as possible, don't you? It's a really happy time. You don't want it to be about.
Well, exactly, and I think that they definitely sucked the joy out of my pregnancy that I felt in the beginning. And I mean, I think people are kind of disinclined to believe anything a disabled person says anyway. So I find doctors to be worse. So you definitely need to go in there with a hard head and be like, no, this is the situation, you're going to listen to me.
Yeah.
If not, then I'll leave.
And hopefully, I mean, if you have those initial conversations and you kind of don't feel like maybe they're the doctor for you, hopefully there's other options, because you want someone who's gonna, obviously we expect to advocate for ourselves, but you want someone who you at least feel like is on your side.
Understands.
Yeah, and I'm not sure, because I haven't tried this myself, but I wonder whether, like, the specialist SMA consultants might also help. It can't hurt to ask.
I imagine
maybe.
Molly, because you're type 3, do you have?
I'm 2.
Oh, are you? Sorry.
Yeah.
Do you have like a respiratory consultant and things like that?
I actually haven't seen anyone in years. It sounds
terrible. It's all right. You just make me laugh. I kind of made that decision when I was about 10, and I didn't see anyone for about 30 years.
My mum made me keep going until I was 16, and after that I was like, I have had enough of this for some time. I'll go back when I deteriorate, but for the minute I'm fine. So
well, until recently there really wasn't a lot of point, was there?
Well, no, you just go to be made depressed for them to poke you.
Now we go to get drugs.
Yeah.
It's a different topic, guys.
Sorry.
But like you said, Julian, I wonder if it would. I imagine it would be different. For example, I think obviously Molly, we're both type 2, but I have quite a lot of respiratory issues. I'm on overnight BiPAP and things like that.
Yeah, my mum's the same. She's got the same. So she's only just had to.
I remember. So yeah, I do reckon probably respiratory consultants and neurologists would probably get involved if like I say, if they're on your side.
Yeah.
So it's probably a good idea for future parents to kind of pool all their resources. Do you think?
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah, I think it's certainly worth a try. Like I said, I didn't, for the reasons really Molly mentioned before, you know.
Yeah.
And also I didn't have anything like the shitty experience that she did either. Sorry if I'm not allowed to say shitty, but I'm going to say shitty.
I'm glad you saw before I did. I've been on my best behaviour.
Believe me, that's not an unusual occurrence for me to swear before an
I was so worried.
But yeah, I think try and get any help that you think you need from wherever you can get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. And kind of going back to kind of before pregnancy, when you were deciding that you wanted to have children, did you think about the logistics of your children possibly having SMA? Did you look into kind of the genetics of your partner to see if they also were a carrier?
Yeah.
You want to talk about that, Julian?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. We did the whole genetic counselling thing because, you know, I kind of went into it with a very well, you know, I don't care, because, you know, I wouldn't get rid of a kid with SMA because that would kind of negate the validity of my whole existence, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then when you do the whole discussion with the doctors, irrespective of whatever the result is, and the result with my partner was that she didn't carry the gene, so it was incredibly unlikely to be passed on anyway. But we didn't know that when we had all the kind of the big discussions about it. And the big discussions about it were around whether your child, whoever the your is, would have the condition in the same way that you have it.
Yeah.
So would they have it worse? Would they have it better? You know, how could you deal with those kind of things? Because it would be a lot. You know, I have no doubt about that. You know, it would be a lot more difficult dealing with a disabled kid as a disabled person.
Are those conversations you have with your partner, sorry, or were they with doctors?
Well, the doctor kind of started them off, but they were generally ones that I had with my partner after we left, and we just, because it was one of those things. It was a really expensive test that was really difficult to get done. This is 16, 17 years ago.
So do you have to pay for it yourselves?
No, but I remember them mentioning that it was quite difficult, and there was only one place in the country that could do it. I think at the time they had to send it off to Liverpool. I might be misremembering that. I don't know why it's Liverpool. I don't know about you guys, but I'm quite notoriously bad to get blood out of anyway.
Yeah,
so it's somehow they managed to hit a vein and get enough blood to do the thing. And I'm sorry, I got you. And then a few weeks later we had the result. By which time we kind of done all the thinking about it. I don't know. I have to be honest. I don't know. I think we probably would have had a child, even if there was a chance.
Yeah.
Well, obviously it was a much bigger chance if one of the parents has SMA and one's a carrier. I'm glad that we did the testing, so that we would have needed to do a lot of preparation if we decided.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And was it quite readily available, the information regarding the statistics of like how likely it was that your child would have a condition? Because I know there's quite often confusion around, you know, if one person has SMA and the other's a carrier, what's the chance if one person has SMA but the partner isn't a carrier, what's the chance? Did you find that information quite easily?
The genetic counselling I got was pretty generic.
I wasn't even offered it or anything. No, I didn't even.
Oh no, we weren't.
Actually.
We weren't offered it. We made the decision.
Okay.
It's not something I knew was available, to be fair.
Yeah,
Before
I imagine actually that would probably be something kind of specialist doctors would suggest, which if you're not under, then you might obviously.
Yeah. We had to search it out for ourselves. We made the decision we were going to try and have children. But before we did, we needed to know. And so we contacted our GP and said, "This is the deal. Excuse me, this is the deal. Refer me to the right people." And then that's what they did.
Yeah.
And like I say, that when we got to the hospital and the whole genetic counselling thing, it was very generic. It could be one of any kind of amount of diseases. I don't know whether she'd looked it up or knew much about it at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Molly, was your experience similar, or?
We didn't get any kind of testing done to see whether Jack was a carrier or not. But it was a discussion that we had between ourselves and just like kind of. I expect if it was a stumbling block for either of us, we would have looked into it and probably done something like that. But it's not something that would have affected our decision.
Okay.
So
you weren't concerned, so you went ahead regardless.
And it sounds kind of cavalier, but
no, it's just.
But yeah, I'm disabled. My mum's got the same disease my sister does. 2 of her children do.
Okay.
It's not something that everyone's got good and bad traits that they do or don't want to pass down.
Yeah.
And I don't see how it's different. The issue that we face.
You've got a very different experience to me then in that, because I'm the only person that's ever had this in any of my family.
For me, yeah,
it's very normal for me.
Yeah.
It's just disability is part of my everyday, and it always has been.
Yeah.
So I think it's a big surprise to me when people act as though it's the worst possible thing that can happen to a person.
Yeah.
It just isn't.
Yeah.
It just isn't. I've been through far worse things than anything my disability's thrown at me. Got nothing to do with the fact that I'm sat down.
Yeah.
So for me, it was never an issue. And it was just something that we either had or we didn't, and then we got on with it. The only issue we've ever faced is from other people who think it's terrible.
So do you to this day not know whether Oscar may be a carrier, or is that not something?
I will arm him with the information when he's older and he can make his own choices. But I should probably make it clear that Oscar doesn't have the disability. He's fighting fit in every single which way. But yeah, it's one of those things that you kind of consider as opposed to let it dominate your decision. You know, that I got a barrage of abuse because of this subject when I was pregnant. And as far as I can tell, Jack has a rare blood disorder that's quite prominent in his family. That's fairly debilitating. Everyone knew this, the people that shouted at me, but no one found that difficult. It was only what I may be passing down. And I can only assume it's because my disability is more obvious.
That physical aspect, isn't it?
That's usually the way it is.
Yeah.
If you look different, then
that's it. It's the worst thing in the world.
That's much worse.
It's a really personal opinion, isn't it? I think it may be quite different if the kind of severity of the condition is more profound. You know, if it's type 1, it may be a different decision. But again, it's up to the parents, isn't it? And I think
every individual, is
although
got to make their own choices.
Everything's changed.
Yeah, now everything's different.
When you think about then, now, the whole world's changed.
Yeah. So I suppose with genetic screening and things, a lot of people who aren't necessarily parents with SMA but having children, they do the genetic testing to prepare for
Yeah, but
treatment.
also, even if you get tested and you find out your kid has got even a very severe version of SMA, there are at least 3 different drugs.
Yeah, if they
Yeah.
have the
And
treatment.
that changes the way they develop and the way they grow up.
Yeah, so I think a
We
lot.
don't know ultimately how, but certainly changes the outcome a lot from
Yeah.
what was previously expected, I suppose.
Yeah, so maybe the idea of kind of testing to see if both parents are carriers, or obviously if someone has SMA, if the other parent is the carrier, maybe that's not relevant anymore. Maybe it's around the fact that when you do become pregnant, whether it's about testing to see whether that child does have it, so that you can prepare for treatment. I think, like you said, Julian, it's changing. Just but as we're talking, it's changing probably.
Yeah.
Having a child is a gamble, regardless. You know, any number of things could go wrong, or be, I don't want to say wrong with the baby, but it's all very much up in the air.
Yeah.
So it's just another risk factor. You could have anything. That's how I see it anyway.
My son's got learning difficulties. That's completely and entirely unrelated to SMA, as far as anybody can tell, and nobody can give it a label or anything else. But you know, like you said, it's a coin toss.
Yeah.
It's a coin with a lot of sides as well.
Yeah.
Not just SMA or not.
Yeah. Cool. So kind of thinking about actually kind of the point at which you had your children, how did you find sort of the practical element of your baby kind of growing up? Did you find any challenges that occurred when the child was born, or as they got older? What do you think was the most difficult aspect? Julian, do you want to start?
I mean, I'm not physically very strong, so I kind of got out doing all the really rubbish stuff, like nappy changes and things like that. I smelt it, but I didn't have to deal with it. So
it's a dad's life, nothing to do with a disability.
well, yeah, maybe, and I also had a job at the time that kept me. I left at 6 in the morning, and I didn't get back till 8 at night, kind of thing.
Oh, blimey!
So I didn't do a lot of that kind of stuff. But I mean, in
different
between,
kind of load.
You have to realise, depending on what your pathology is, really, that some things you aren't going to be able to do.
Yeah.
I've never kicked a ball. I've never played catch. I've never I've never picked up my kid, but your kid does crawl up your legs and sit on your foot plates when you go around the supermarket. And
you managed to get that interaction.
Yeah, there's different things. Yeah, I mean, I've got a big belly, and my children slept on me, and they love that because they got the whole rumble and the whole soft and warm and daddy thing.
Oh, lovely.
And so that's a different thing.
Yeah. Did you find any? Did you make any kind of equipment or adapt, like any tips you found to?
At the time, I really, especially with my first kid, I really wanted a like a little buggy to go on the back or on the front, like a kid's car seat thing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I think there was one wheelchair company that had made one special one for one person, but I couldn't really kind of justify it because they grow so fast that when you bought something for a baby and it takes 2 months to build it, and then you get it and you fit it, and they don't fit it.
Too big by that point.
Yeah, although I've seen a lot more stuff now. So I mean, I think you can even buy things you can adapt on eBay and places like that now, that you can kind of just pull behind your chair as long as you remember that they're there. So there's a couple of things that would have been quite nice. But as I say, the kids, certainly my kids, really adapted pretty quickly.
Yeah, they do.
Children are much better at adapting than we
Yeah,
are.
and they learn to do things quicker if they need to. I had a friend who was a wheelchair user, and her daughter, you know, kind of got up before she was 1, really, crawled up the
it's
side
the
of the
same.
bath because she knew
Same
that
for Oscar.
mummy couldn't reach all the way in the bath, so she just literally went, okay, well, I'm going to meet you halfway there.
I don't think people give children enough credit
No.
for
No.
what they're capable of.
Yeah.
Oscar's amazing. He was walking by 11 months,
Yeah,
and it made my life so much easier.
yeah,
He'll climb kind of up me if I'm in my chair and just sit on my lap,
yep.
and he'll keep himself steady if I'm wheeling. He can get in his high chair on his own. He can do pretty much anything. He's basically middle-aged now, but yeah, he's pretty amazing.
Yeah, yeah, and you know, kids, pretty much like anyone else in the real world, I guess. You know, if they can get an easy life by not doing something, then they won't do it. But if they have to do it, then they'll just do it.
He's pretty brilliant. Yeah, he knows, and if I ask him to do something, he knows what I'm saying, and he does.
Yeah,
And that's just it.
yeah. I think the other thing, I really had to learn how to focus a kid. So when they get like toddler, run around, stick their finger through the telly, kind of irritating. All day, yeah, you kind of have to really. I couldn't get up. I mean, the number of people that I've seen kind of grab a toddler by the onesie and like haul them back in like they're on a bungee from doing something, and that never happened to me. But not only did it not happen to me, I didn't need it to happen because a lot of people who are physically more able than I am just knew that they could get up and grab the kid before it chucked itself down the stairs or something. You know, and well, A, I live in a bungalow, so it's not really a problem. But B, you know, your kid learns to listen to you really quickly, and you kind of learn, and it focuses on you, and it understands, you know, different things are going to happen. So,
got that sense of danger a little bit earlier on, I think, because you're not
really adaptable as well. They're really adaptable. I mean, it's like my dogs. Every time my chair clicks, my dogs move because they don't want to get run over.
Same.
Yeah, my dog.
My kids are like that as well.
Yeah. So, Molly, from a mother's perspective, do you want to expand a bit? How did you find it when Oscar was really young, with kind of obviously having to lift him all the time and bathing and things like that?
Well, when he was brand new, Jack was in charge of bathing. I didn't trust myself, and I was healing as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, it was. I think at first, it sounds really silly, but I was very concerned about how things looked in terms of how I was picking him up.
Yeah.
And I felt like I wanted to pick my baby up the way other mummies do it and make it all look beautiful and blissful and black and white picture on Instagram, and that's not reality. So once I kind of adapted the way I did it, like I'd have to lean and then lift him, making sure that the weight was being bared on something else, and then I could do it. Millions of cushions if I was holding him. Just little things. I couldn't get him up the stairs until he could get up the stairs himself, and that was a thing. So in the morning, when Oscar was newborn, Jack was home with me for about a month, so that wasn't a concern. When he went back to work, we would have to get up when he did, and he leaves at about 6. So, but I was awake anyway because I haven't slept in 2 years. But yeah, so we would just come down, stay downstairs all day, and then he would take us upstairs to bed. You know, and that was just how it worked for us.
Yeah.
If I needed to get him around, I had the buggy in the living room, and he would be in the buggy, and I would wheel him into the kitchen when I needed to go in there.
Yeah.
And it was just finding ways.
And sometimes you think about things that you think will work. I think somebody bought us like a you know, one of those pouchy things that you put on your front or your back.
Oh yeah, I had a sling.
And I had one of those, and I wore it, and then I didn't realise that my trunk control, although it was all right for me, was no good for me and the baby.
Yeah.
So I started to
It's a
lean
very different
forward.
reality.
And then it's like, okay, hold on a second, I've got to do some whole I'll work out whole sort of engineering
It's
parameters
hard.
to this stuff. Yeah.
Try
So
being
then I had to
pregnant.
be strapped up myself before I then got a baby strapped to me and all those kind of things.
I used a sling for about 6 months, only sometimes, because it was just like being pregnant again, and I hated being pregnant.
Yeah.
So it was useful for when we were out. So we bought a buggy that we didn't really use the buggy much outside. I think we used it more inside than we did out.
Yeah.
So I'd have him in a sling and Jack would push me, and that worked.
Yeah.
Or, you know, whatever which way round, Jack would wear it sometimes. And that was useful, but as Oscar got bigger and more wiggly, it became sort of hellish using it. He didn't like being confined. So he kind of got, as he got more independent, we started crawling, the practical side of getting him around was infinitely easier. So much easier.
Yeah.
It was brilliant.
Yeah, once they start moving, as long as you can get them to go where you want them to go, it's a lot easier, yeah.
Well, it's the funny thing. When he started to walk, everyone told me that this was going to be what I found hard. But it was, honestly, it was just so much easier for me.
Yep.
Because, I mean, he's a good boy anyway. And like, if you guide him, he'll go where you want.
Yeah. And we walked the dogs with the kids from, as soon as they could walk. When they could do like a dog walk circuit or whatever where we go, then they come with us, and they've been tramping around these streets around here for forever, and they get used to it. They get used to walking with other people. They get used to holding onto your chair or your hand or
he's happy to sit on my lap.
Whatever you've got to do. It all kind of works.
Trial and error.
Well, that's it. Yeah, but that's parenting.
Yeah.
No matter who you are.
Yeah, definitely. So thinking about extra support and things, I don't know about your care packages kind of before you had children, but did you find a need to increase care support, or how did that work for you guys?
Well, a lot of mine came, as I said, I had quite an intensive job at the time, so a lot of my support came along with access to work funding. So it wasn't really tied into my home life. It kind of picked me up at my door and dropped me off at my door afterwards, really.
So does your partner help you with care at home?
Yes, yeah. And latterly I now have, I used to have PAs, then I didn't, and now I do again. So my PAs help me with my kids now, if necessary. But it's one of those things that if you've got a reasonably good LA, they should build in some time for you to do that. I think it's a perfectly reasonable request. And I don't see that it would be a problem for them to facilitate your life in a very normal way.
Yeah, 100%.
So when your children were newborns or kind of younger, was your wife or your partner still helping you with the care as well as the children, and did that pose any problems, or did you find a good routine?
Yeah, we found a routine, a bit like Molly. She had to get up at the point she had to get up, to get in with everything and make it all work. But you kind of do it. My wife took 6 months off, which was bad for money, but good for her and the children, and that kind of worked out. And then after I definitely found, after 6 months, it's kind of your routine's established then. And it's just kind of like a well-oiled machine, really. I mean, you have your bad nights, and you have your, somebody gets a cold or whatever, you get spanners in the works, but generally speaking, it kind of
you're in your groove.
It just works then.
Molly, did you have any extra support, or did you have support before Oscar? Or
I've never had a carer, not in the conventional sense. I suppose there's things that Jack would do that possibly he wouldn't be doing if I was able-bodied. But nothing for me particularly. It's more like the main kind of stumbling block for me in terms of parenting has been the fatigue. So like there's tiredness for parenting, and then it's kind of a whole different ball game when it's chronic. And by the time Jack gets home from work, I need to be off the clock.
Okay.
Not so much like, oh, that's it, I don't want to know my child anymore, but I need to not be the one responsible for whatever he's wanting.
Yeah.
So Jack normally gets home at 5. Our school would have already had dinner, and then that's it for me. I'll go have a lie down if I need to, or have a bath, or just have something just to let my body kind of rest from the day.
Have you
And I
seen
think
fatigue affect your SMA?
I don't think it has. I mean, it's hard to know what a good week of sleep wouldn't fix.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah. I mean, I think SMA I think it's quite reasonably proven now that it gets more affected by stress and things like that.
yeah, that's definitely the if I've had a particularly bad day, by the time Jack gets home, I need to just go to bed.
Yeah.
Because I can feel my body throbbing. You feel it in your shoulders, just heavy.
Yeah.
And I would say that that's what my disability is affected the most. Because my stamina isn't what most parents would be. So by the time Jack gets home, that's his. He does bath time, he does bedtime, and I recover from being beaten up by a toddler all day.
Oh, well, it gets better soon. It gets better.
Okay.
You get rid of them like a whole day if they get to school or preschool.
Yeah, I wanted to get him into nursery, but then COVID happened, and I was worried he was going to kill me. So
yeah,
I decided against it.
Yeah, probably a good choice.
I want everything, don't I? Soon the need for rest will overcome. I'll be like, I don't even mind if I die.
Yeah, and just kind of last question, what would you say? I mean, we've already discussed it a little bit. What would you say to kind of future parents or people that are thinking about having children? Have you got any tips or anything like that?
Go first, Molly. You want to answer this?
Do your research, know what you're up against. Not everything doctors say is gospel. And if you feel you can do it, then you can.
Yeah.
You know, I would say just if you think if you've got that in you and you know, no, hang on, maybe they don't know what they're talking about. Live your life. You've only got one.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I would wholeheartedly agree with that, and I would also say that I try not to worry about doing stuff the same as other people.
Yeah, that's a good. Yeah.
Because it's not really important how you
it really
do
isn't
something, as long as you can do what you need to do.
Yeah, your child's happy. That's all.
Yeah,
that's the aim.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how you got there.
Exactly. And I can tell you without doubt, unless you are horrible, and probably even then, your kid's gonna love you. And,
yeah.
And
it's so rewarding.
And that's what it's all about, really.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I think that's a good sentiment to leave on. But yeah, thank you guys so much for your time. I mean, I found it really interesting. I'm 21 and I'm obviously not now, but I'm thinking about whether I want a family in the future, and I found it really interesting. So thank you for your time.
Very welcome.
Okay, and I was just I'd say if anybody's got any other questions when they've listened or seen this, drop them to SMA UK, and we'll try and get you answers when we can. Yeah, if there's any questions, I'm sure.
Yeah, I get a lot of questions on my Instagram, so if anyone wants to go to that and look at the stupid things I do, then they're welcome to.
Do a little promo, Molly. What's your Instagram account?
At Mums on a Roll. Thank you very much.
At what?
Mums on a Roll. I'm
Mums
very
on a Roll. Okay.
Yeah.
Great,
it's just all way over here.